Rally round. Rally, rally round. Rally, rally round. Jehovah's run, come. Rally, rally round. Rally, rally round. Come away, come away, come away. Come away, come away, come away. Run, come. Rally, rally round. Rally, rally round. Come away, come away, come away. Come away, come away. Come. Rally, rally round. Rally, rally round. African people, run, come. Rally, rally round. Rally, rally round.
Jay, thank you so much. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Councillor Chris Moyes, and I am the chair of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee. I'd like to welcome you to a special convening of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee as we convene our first meeting of a new term and welcome 14 new public members to the committee, here online and in person. Thank you to our guest, Master Drummer Negus Midim, from his Holistic Vibrancy, who helped us open today's meeting in a good way, allowing us to pay homage to the important work of this committee, advancing outcomes for Black communities and celebrating our past, present, and future contributions to well-being of Black Torontonians. I would now like to welcome Elder Chris Leonard to ground us in libation to open the meeting.
Thank you. Ago. Amen. Ago.
Amen.
Ago.
Amen. to come up? Rosina.
When we call one, we call them all. So I close by saying, Madasi, thank you. Madasi.
Madasi.
Thank you. Madasi Pa, thank you very much. It is well and it is done.
Thank you. Thank you, Elder Chris and assistant. The committee secretary has confirmed that we have quorum, so I will call meeting 1 of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee to order. And again, welcome to everyone. I feel like I can't see everybody here. Here we go. This is a little better. This meeting is being held in person and using the city-wide WebEx technology, with members and staff connecting by video conference or calling in. Because we are meeting in person and remotely, we ask for your patience with any delays and technical issues. Members of the public can watch the meeting streaming live on YouTube at youtube.com/Toronto City Council Live. I would like to remind all staff and invited participants who are joining the meeting remotely to keep your mics muted and your video turned off, unless you need to address the committee. This will make it easier for me as chair and for those watching YouTube to see the members as we debate and vote on agenda items. Members, please keep your mics muted unless you wish to question staff or speak to an item. If members wish to ask questions of staff or speak, please make sure your video is on and raise your hand, or unmute your mic and indicate your intention to speak, and I will create a speakers list. When voting on an item or a motion, I would ask members to turn on your video and raise your hand to indicate your vote. If there is a recorded vote, I will ask you to state if you are in favor or opposed. Members, I want to remind you that although we are participating remotely and in person, we must still submit our motions in writing. The clerk's staff are available at cabrac@toronto.ca to help with motions. Although we are in different locations, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Committee acknowledges the land we are meeting on is the traditional territories of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat people, and is now home to many first diverse nations, Inuit and Métis peoples. We also acknowledge that Toronto is covered by Treaty 13 with Mississaugas of the Credit. I will now invite Kemba Byam, Acting Manager of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit in Social Development, Finance and Administration of the City, to provide an African ancestral acknowledgement.
Thank you, Councillor Moyes. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Sister Chris, for that acknowledgement. And as we do so, we also acknowledge all treaty peoples, those who came here as settlers, as migrants, either in this generation or in generations past, and those of us who came here involuntarily, particularly forcibly displaced Africans brought here as a result of the transatlantic slave trade and slavery. In doing this work, we continue to pay tribute to those ancestors of African origin and descent, and we offer these acknowledgements separately to honor the distinct legacies of Indigenous and African peoples here on Turtle Island. Ashe.
Are there any declarations of interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act? If you would like to declare an interest, please indicate the item number and the nature of the interest. When declaring an interest under the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act, members are also required to file a written declaration with the clerk. City clerk staff can provide you with forms which you should complete and submit before the end of the meeting each time you declare an interest. Seeing none. Okay, wonderful. We can move on. Bear with me while I consider a few items. So we'll do a quick rundown, even though it's not in my notes. I will follow our procedures here even though it's our first meeting. So item number 1, CR 1.1, is remarks and introductions of committee members. So I will hold this item down. CR 1.2, appointment overview and expectations of public members. I'll also hold this item down. Item CR 1.3, city governance overview and the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee. There is a presentation on this item, so I'll hold it down as well. Item CR 1.4, meeting processes and simplified rules and procedure. There's a presentation on this item. I will hold it down. Item CR 1.5, election of vice chair. Of course, I will hold this one down. Item CR 1.6, increasing equity and access, social policy strategies and initiatives at the City of Toronto. I will hold this item down because there's a presentation on this item. And item CR 1.7, an overview and update on Toronto Action Plan to Confronting Anti-Black Racism. And there too is a presentation on this item, so all items I held down. Procedure in the city is important. So I do have some opening remarks. Again, good morning and welcome to everyone. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to our first Confronting Anti-Black Racism Committee for this term. Today, we gather not only as a committee, but as a unified force committed to fostering positive change. Each of you bring a unique perspective and expertise that is invaluable in our collective efforts to confront the deeply ingrained prejudices and biases that perpetrate discrimination and racism against the Black community. Our work is to collaborate, brainstorm, and devise concrete solutions that address the root causes of anti-Black racism in our city and our communities. Our approach will be one of inclusivity, respect, and understanding so that we can identify actionable strategies that dismantle systemic barriers and pave the way for a more just and equitable city. Our objective is to enhance the quality of life for Black residents of Toronto by fostering opportunities that support and safeguard the social, cultural, and economic welfare of Black communities throughout the city. As chair, I am inspired by the potential for transformation that lies within our collective capacity to effect change. I'm very excited to be chairing this committee. I invite each of you to embrace this journey with enthusiasm, recognizing that our collective efforts will define the impact we make and reflect and shared commitments to progress. Thank you for your dedication and the talents you bring to this essential work. Together, we can make a lasting difference. So we'll start with item CR 1.1, remarks and introductions of committee members and staff. Each member will have 2 minutes to share their names, professional role, and a bit about their area of expertise, and one thing they would like to see advanced by the committee. So I will start to my, you know what, I'll just go by the list that I have. Thank you. We will start with, and if I pronounce your name incorrectly, please correct me. And I'll try to endeavor to get it right the next time. Akwatu Kinti, Director, Community Resources. This is staff list, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm pleased to be here as the Director of the Community Resources. I'd like to see the expertise applied, and we have real conversations with concrete solutions that's proposed.
Yeah, can you give me a second? Sorry. My apologies. I'm actually going to do the members first and then staff. I'll come back to you. So I've already introduced myself. My name is Councillor Chris Moyes. My ward is Toronto Centre, Ward 13. And my background is actually healthcare. I spent 22 years at St. Mike's Hospitals as a counselor. My Eric's expertise is addictions and mental health and underhoused. And I've lived in this area, this ward, for 25 plus years. And prior to being a counselor, I was a school board trustee for 6.5 years and vice chair of the TDSB for 2. So I'm going to try my best here. Amaniri William.
Okay, thank you so much. My name is William Amanyire. I'm a physician by training. I have a master's of public health too, and I'm a PhD candidate of public health. That is my expertise in healthcare, and I'm the executive director of CareLinks, which is a charity advancing health equity for Black communities. I would like to advance health equity as part of my contribution to this committee, and also ensuring that we advance social medicine for our people who are facing barriers, especially those who cannot access primary health care. Thank you.
Thank you. Beverly Jean Daniel. Are you here? Okay, we'll move on to the next person. Maybe Beverly will join us later on. Beverly Jean is actually her name. Charis Newton Thompson.
Thank you.
Just press the button, and the red button will show.
Yeah, got it. Charis, pronounced as if it's a K.
Pardon me, sorry?
Charis, pronounced as if it's a K
Okay.
instead of the CH.
All right, that's good to know. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm a retired principal. I've been an educator for over 40 years in different countries, in Guyana, in Jamaica, and here in Canada. And also been a volunteer in the community here in Toronto and in other places, but here for all the time I've been in Canada, I've been a volunteer mostly in the Black community. And what I'd like to see is more funding for Black community organizations. Funding that's not project funding, funding that's core funding, so that the organizations could know what to expect from year to year.
Thank you, Harris, for joining us. Ifia Tikai Annan. Are you here? Just coming later? Okay. We'll come back to her. George Amo. Okay. Halimo Hashi. Online? I was told you're online.
Everybody.
Hi, welcome.
Yeah, can you guys all hear?
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Halima Hashi. I'm a mental health and forensic social worker, as well as a lecturer at York University. This is my second term on the committee. I'm really excited to be here. And a few things I'd like to see forwarded by the committee is a reduction to barriers to social determinants of health, such as housing, education, and community. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Moscow.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Kathy Monsky. I am interim dean of the Faculty of Design at University. I do research in the areas of health equity, and I am interested in thinking about how do we undesign the structural racism and the structures that reduce access and reduce Black flourishing. I have a diverse background, and so my areas are both in education. I've been an educator for 30 years, as well as a mixed media artist and a healthcare provider. My PhD is in pharmaceutical sciences. And so I'm very much interested in thinking, how do we create a more vibrant Black cultural sector for Black creatives, as well as address the social determinants of health that impede health for Black people, and also access to the educational sector, which are the three areas for which I represent.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. Sounds like you should be on the Board of Health. Lucina Rakotova.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Lucina Rakotova, pronouns she, her. So my background is in public health. I recently acquired my master's in public health from the U of T. Currently working with the Intersectoral Action Fund at the Public Health Agency. So I'm really in the field of supporting community-based funding in the social determinants of health. And previously have worked in other spaces in social policy in the federal context. But one of the, I guess, foci that I would like to see with the committee is just an overarching emphasis on those social determinants of health, particularly in the financialization of housing and housing affordability and quality, as well as infrastructure to support placemaking and sociocultural resilience, so for Black creatives, and really excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. May Mohammed.
Hi, everyone. I'm currently a project coordinator at Taibu Community Health Center for the Amara Generation Project, which is a mental health capacity building project that works with Black youth, families, and faith-based leaders. My areas of expertise are mental health, health policy. I also work as an arts educator, mainly with like poetry, but my personal interests are really in fashion illustration and fashion design. What I'd love to see out of this committee is putting more work into African-centered approaches to mental health care, and also arts-based approaches, because that's been a big fuel in terms of resilience and resistance for our peoples for many years. Thank you.
Thank you. Queen Kiyokai.
Yes, I'm here online. It's Kukoi, Queen Kukoi. So I'm Queen Kukoi, they, she pronouns. I'm a creative technologist, artist, scholar. My practice encompasses queer theory, Afrofuturism, and Noetic sciences. I'm also the founding co-lead of an organization called Outside Arts. We are a creative technology, community, and cultural arts nonprofit that is interested in merging arts, technology, and wellness through Black speculative design. My interest in this committee is to, I'm excited to contribute to the development of the Toronto creative landscape and supporting organizations and artists to become, to prioritize equitable opportunities for artists and arts organizations, specifically Black arts organizations.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Rosemary Sadler.
Hello, how are you?
I am well so far this morning.
Great.
Happy to be here with all of you.
I'm happy to be here too. So I'm Rosemary Sadler. Some of you may know me as the person who headed the only provincial heritage organization in the country dedicated to Black history for an extended period of time. And with that interest in acting as a trustee for the legacy of the community, I'm interested in what the possibilities are with this committee. Some people have already offered wonderful ideas about what could happen next in terms of public health and more awareness, arts support, funding for organizations. But a lot of what I have done has been about Black history and community education. I feel that because so much has not been done, everything needs to be done. And I'm here to just understand better and push whatever can be done through the combined efforts of this committee.
Thank you so much. Salma Malin.
Good morning. I'm Selma Malin. I'm a Master of Public Policy candidate at the University of Toronto, an emerging public policy professional, hopefully by the end of June. And the reason why I'm interested in being here today is to really address the challenges that face youth. And I think one place to begin initially is promoting Black youth specifically to be more involved in civic engagement and really tackling the challenges that they face in education, the disparities that exist in the education sector, and employing equitable frameworks to make sure that we achieve the most excellent performance from our Black youth. That's all for me.
Thank you so much. Shannon Lawrence. Is she online? Okay. Walid Kogali Ali.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you can hear me. My name is Walid Kogali Ali, and I'm really proud to serve on this advisory committee. I'm a community organizer and activist based in Regent Park. We've lived for 18 years. Currently the interim chair, not even vice chair anymore, interim chair of the Neighborhood Legal Services. I'm one of the resident co-chairs of the Regent Park Social Development Plan. I also am a principal at a consultancy with four black women, focused on engagement. What I'm hoping to do on this advisory committee is leverage my knowledge and understanding of the impact of anti-black racism, where, for example, I supported the Ontario Human Rights Commission with the Desperate Impact Report. So I'm hoping to work with all of you to review the policies and practices of the city to ensure that we address anti-black racism systemically, and also to implement our action plan, which is such an important document. So thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you. And I didn't get your name.
My name is Afia Tachianen.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay.
You have 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
So Afia Tachianen, I am currently the program manager at YACE, which stands for the Youth Association for Academics, Athletics, and Character Education. The program lead there for an initiative called the New Narrative Initiative. I'm there. I'm also the executive founder for a group called Black Lives for Change, which focuses on anti-black racism. We try to further the lives of people who look like us through economic development, as well as advocacy, things like that. I'm also an entrepreneur. I have a couple of businesses. I am a consultant for a company called Rising Royalty. And so we consult nonprofits who are trying to take their organizations to the next level using sport and accessing the nonprofit world. I'm also a mother of 3 kids. So what I'm looking forward to doing with this committee is furthering the agenda of employability of Black youth, of Black people as a whole. For me, economics is the language of the world. And when we have money, people listen. When we have money, people care. And so for me, once you have that, then people have to pay attention to you. And so that is my goal with this committee.
Okay, thank you. Did I miss any members at all? Anyone else came online while I was... Okay, so I'll turn it over to... Dr. Daniel, go ahead. Do you have... Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Good morning, everyone. Okay. My apologies. I am transitioning in between meetings. Dr. Beverly G. Daniel, I am an associate professor at Ryerson University, which is now Toronto Metropolitan University. I am a returning member to the committee, I have been involved with the cable unit for a number of years now and have played a key role in developing the curriculum that has been used for the training across the city. In addition to which, my primary focus in terms of my research has been on Black student access and success. And I argue that my work spans from pre-K to PhD. In addition to focusing on changing the narrative in regards to Black student education, I am also currently looking at mental health issues, particularly suicide and self-harm amongst Black youth and young adults, because we're seeing a significant rise in that population. In terms of my work with the CABRAC committee, I am hoping that I can continue to support its efforts in regards to addressing education as a key component of the social determinants of change, because recognizing as well that education also impacts economics, it impacts health, it impacts housing, and all of the various categories that people talked about. Because if we're able to access housing, but we're not able to access viable career opportunities to allow us to afford or to keep the houses that we have, then it becomes a cycle, right? We just cycle through these spaces. So again, my focus is on extending educational development in our community. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. And now I'm going to turn it over to staff, but I'm going to introduce the extraordinary Denise Andre Campbell, Exec Director of SDFA here at the city, and she'll explain what her role is and what she's all about here. But she's our superstar.
That's very kind of you, Councillor Moise. Good morning, everyone. It's lovely to see you. My team and I are so thankful that we are at this point to finally be working with Councillor Moise to convene this inaugural meeting, our second CABRAC since Council created the committee. So I'm the executive director of a division called Social Development, Finance, and Administration. You will hear more about some of our work, but inside the division is the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit. And so together we're here to support you. Thank you for those priorities that you named. We're taking notes, and we'll work with you and the chair and your co-chair through your term in order to try to advance those priorities. There's a number of folks from the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit in the room. It's important that you know who they are because they will be key contacts for you and will be working with you throughout your term to support your leadership in this space. So if you all don't mind, OCABR staff, can you just stand? That way they can see you all. Good, good, good. Yep. Okay, great. Thank you. You need to know their names. All right. Okay, we're going to do this. So, Michelle, can you, team, can you just come by a microphone so we can quickly do your names, please? Okay. Michelle, do you want to start?
Thank you, Denise. My name is Michelle Maloubi, and I am a Community Development Officer with the CABR unit.
Good morning. My name is Kemba Byam. I am Acting Manager of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit.
Good morning. My name is Milana Roberts. I'm a Policy Development Officer in the CABR unit.
Yep.
Good morning, all. I'm Yao Togobo. I'm a Community Development Officer. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I'm one of two training and development consultants with the CABR unit.
Good morning. My name is Dennis Sobita. I am one of the new policy development officers with the unit.
He's literally like week 2. Dennis?
Test. Oh. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hamda Mohammed. I'm the Community Development Worker at CABR. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. And I would also like to introduce my colleague, one of the directors within social development who oversees the CABR unit.
Akwatu Kenti, Director of Community Resources.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. And I do have two of my staff here supporting me this afternoon, or morning still, Yusuf and Juliet. And I see the mayor also has one of her staff here as well. It was also at the end. Okay. So thank you to all of the members for being here. We have an exceptional group of leaders and advocates before us to drive impact as we head into the final year of the UN International Decade for People of African Descent. So again, this is all procedural, so I'm going to ask a question here. Members, do you have any questions on this item? Because it is an actual standing item on the agenda. You don't have to have a question. We'll get through all that eventually, and you'll understand why we do this. Are there any speakers to this item? So you could speak to an item. So when we say, well, anyways, staff will explain this later. We also need a mover. So unfortunately, we don't have any name tags today, but we will going forward. I was told they would be ready for next time. So I'm just randomly going to choose someone on the list. Harris Newton Thompson, would you like to move this item?
I so move.
Okay, all those in favor, raise your hands. All those opposed, carried. Thank you. Alrighty. So the next item is CR 1.2, appointment overview and exceptions of public members, expectations, sorry, of public members. Antoinette Churchlow from Public Appointments Secretariat is here to give a presentation to the committee. You're online, okay. So Antoinette, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Moyes. One moment, please, while I share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Yes, you can?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. Thank you, everyone, and a warm welcome to all of you. My name is Antoinette Churchlow, and I work in Public Appointments Secretariat. Our office assisted with the outreach and administration of this recruitment process. So I've had the opportunity to meet all of you at some point via email, but I can definitely tell you it's so much better to meet all of you here today, and I'm really happy to be here and to hear your introductions and your hope for the committee. Today, I'll be talking about your role as committee members, the terms and conditions of your appointment, and towards the end of my presentation, I'll share a few principles to guide the role. So you have been appointed by City Council as a member of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee. This committee is one of 7 current council advisory bodies, and each council advisory body is an important in how the city engages with. The committee's mandate, composition, and structure are settled in the terms of reference, which outlines the purpose, the governance, composition, and the term. Being on a committee is a great, you have the opportunity to lend your and decisions on city programs and services, while also providing a voice for community members from across Toronto. You are providing advice based on your lived experience, your community work, your professional experience, feedback from stakeholders, and more. It may seem a bit overwhelming at first, but you'll have lots of support. Your work on the committee is done with the support of staff from the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit, the City Clerk's Office, and more. You'll receive reports before meetings, you can ask questions and get clarity on procedural matters, etc. In terms of your appointment, all members of the committee have a term of office ending on November the 14th, 2026, or until the mandate is completed, whichever comes first. Members are also appointed at pleasure of council. Members can only be appointed by council to serve on one city board, committee, or tribunal at a time. Public members of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee must continue to be eligible. And the City of Toronto has a public appointments policy with criteria which applies to all city boards, committee, and tribunals. And this is what sets out the eligibility criteria. So to continue to be on this committee, you must continue to be a resident of the City of Toronto. You cannot be an employee of the City of Toronto or any of its agencies or corporations, and you cannot be a spouse, partner, child, or parent of a member of City Council. The committee meets up to 4 times per year or at the call of the chair. Meetings are public and are held on weekdays. Attendance affects quorum. So if there's no quorum, the meeting cannot continue. So please notify staff in advance if you cannot attend a meeting. Also, if members miss 3 consecutive meetings without being excused by the committee, their seat will be declared vacant. You will also receive meeting materials before the meeting. This gives you the opportunity to read the material before the meeting and come prepared to discuss the items on the agenda. Honoraria for attending meetings. Public members can choose to receive an honorarium of $125 per meeting attended for up to 4 meetings. Honoraria are not intended for members who serve as representatives of organizations or businesses when they are employed. Reasonable expenses incurred while tending to authorized committee business can be reimbursed. So I'm sure that you're excited to begin work on this committee, and a leave of absence or resignation is probably not on your mind at this moment. But if you would like to take a leave of absence, you may submit a request to the committee to take a leave for a period of time for any reason. If you run or seek appointment to any elected office, you will be required to take a leave of absence. The leave of absence must begin on or before the date of application to or the date of nomination for the elected office. Depending on the duration of the leave and the committee's requirements, City Council may fill the vacancy while you are absent. If you must resign for any reason, you may do so by submitting a letter to the Public Appointments Office with the effective resignation date. You're making an important contribution to decision-making at City Hall and are impacting how the city delivers its programs and services to residents across Toronto. With that in mind, I just want to share some general principles that we feel are important for all public board and committee members to bear in mind. The first one is to serve the public well. So strive to have a solid understanding of the board's overall goals and missions. Acknowledge the uniqueness of your responsibility for the well-being of the city. Work collaboratively towards a shared purpose and communicate with the public in a respectful, fair, open, efficient, and constructive manner. The second one is to foster equity, diversity, inclusion, and reconciliation by championing the city's commitment to a discrimination-free environment, value diverse perspectives and contributions. The third is to act with integrity and impartiality, conduct your duties with integrity in an objective and uninfluenced manner, and place public good before self-interest. And last but not least, champion the standards of public service. Uphold the highest standards of conduct. Display the principles of integrity, objectivity, confidentiality, accountability, openness, honesty, and leadership. So when would you contact the city clerk's office? Well, please notify the committee secretary and public appointment staff by email immediately. If your contact information changes, if your eligibility changes, so let's say, for instance, if you're no longer a resident of Toronto, that means that your eligibility changes. And in that situation, because you must be a resident of Toronto, then you need to resign from the committee. Also, if you're requesting a leave of absence for any reason, please provide that with effective dates. And if you're resigning, please also provide a letter with the effective dates. So this concludes my presentation. If you have any questions, please contact the Public Appointment Secretariat in the City Clerk's office by email at appoint@toronto.ca or by phone at 416-397-0088. Thank you.
Thank you, Antoinette. Thank you. Any questions for Antoinette? Okay, I do have one, Antoinette.
Sure.
So you mentioned quorum. Can you perhaps elaborate as to quorum? What is the threshold here? Looking at my list, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8.
Sure. Yes, generally it's half plus 1. So half of the members plus 1 would be quorum.
All right. The clerk just informed me it's 8 is quorum.
Oh, it's.
Yeah. Okay. Any speakers on this item? Okay. Seeing none, then I'm going to ask, Beverly Jean Daniels, can you move this item? That's Dr. Daniels online. Are you here, Dr. Daniels?
Yes, I am.
Can you just move that? Can you move this item?
I move.
Thank you.
This item forward.
Thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? Carried. The next item is CR 1.3, City Governance Overview and the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee. So Sonali Chakrabarti, Project Director, Corporate Initiatives from the City Manager's Office, is here to give a presentation to the committee. And you're online as well. Go ahead.
Yes, I'm online. Thank you, Councillor. And a presentation will be put on your screen shortly. Great. So I'm really pleased to be with all of you. I attended the very first meeting of this committee when it was first created last term and did a similar overview. So let's go to the next slide. My name is Sonali Chakrabarti, and I'm part of the City Manager's Office. And what I'm going to focus on is a quick overview of how our government is structured. And I think this will be important reference for you as you start to receive presentations and delve into matters over the course of your time on this committee. So as a starting point, the city's powers are created through foundational legislation by the province of Ontario and through what is called the City of Toronto Act. All other municipalities in Ontario are created through the Municipal Act, and Toronto was recognized to require some additional powers and specifics, and that act came into force in 2007. And it's through changes to that act that you would have noticed over the last several years that our city council size had changed, additional powers were provided to the mayor. So that's sort of an important piece of reference legislation. And that act gives power to city council, which is the decision-making authority, the body for our overall government, and through city council, other aspects of our government are essentially created. The objective and impartial public service, of which you've met several staff today, they're led by a city manager as the head of the public service. And we provided additional links here for you to go to based on your interest, where you can see an organizational structure and all of our city divisions. And these are things you may want to come back to as you have meetings and items from various divisions. In addition to the sort of direct oversight and the direct delivery, what we call direct delivery of service through the public service, there are also entities that are created by City Council that are a little more arm's length, and I'll talk a bit about those, which are agencies and corporations, and you will be familiar with these in your everyday life. For example, the TTC is an agency of the city, as is the libraries. And then we have what are called accountability officers that provide important independent oversight, and they are required. They're required positions under the City of Toronto Act, and they provide an important function for transparency and oversight of government. So we'll go through each of these briefly. So we'll go to the next slide. So just to start with, in terms of how City Council is organized, so there are a number of committees that operate as part of the overall council structure. Some of these are policy committees, so they're called standing committees, and the names refer to the kinds of policy matters that those committees consider. For example, economic and community development matters, or planning and housing matters, etc. And these are composed of councillors only, and they're, with a total of 25 members of council, these committees tend to have 6 or 7 people on them. There are also community councils, and these reflect a geographic perspective. And as you know, Toronto is significantly larger than most municipalities in Ontario, and with a legacy, predating amalgamation. There were existing municipalities such as North York, Scarborough, etc., and there was a desire to ensure there continues to be a geographic focus on local matters. So these community councils are made up of the councillors that represent boundaries that are roughly aligned with, the original Scarborough or North York, etc. And they have delegated decision-making authority by City Council to make final decisions on some local matters. There is also an executive committee, and the mayor has the power to appoint the chairs, what we call the chairs and vice chairs of these policy committees, and the chairs of those committees sit on executive along with some other members, and the executive committee considers matters that cut across the government, as well as financial and intergovernmental matters, or where there's multiple subject area at play. So those are the kinds of items that come to executive. There are other committees that help to, for example, appoint members such as yourselves, in terms of the Civic Appointments Committee. Stricken Committee helps to appoint councillors to these bodies, and there are other boards and bodies such as the Board of Health, and we can get into a lot of nuance, but I'm going to just keep this brief for today. But I encourage you to look at the links that are provided in these slides. Council advisory bodies such as this committee are not committees of council in the sense of formed only by council members, but they have public members such as yourselves, as well as a council member as your chair. And they primarily provide their advice through executive committee. So their role is to not take final decisions, but to provide advice. And there are occasions where there may be some advice provided to the other standing committees, but the main role is to provide it through executive committee. Next slide. So this is just to give you a sense of those community council boundaries. So they are made up of of the wards, the 25 wards that we have, and you can see that they're roughly related to old city boundaries, if you're familiar with those. Next slide. So as I was mentioning about agencies and corporations, many of which you would be familiar with, the purpose of having these more arm's length bodies is to create in some cases, opportunities for them to operate in a more commercial environment. For example, the Toronto Parking Authority, who runs all of the city parking facilities, and their role is to generate revenue for the city. In some cases, it's to meet legal requirements. So the police service, the Toronto Police Service or Toronto Libraries, those are examples of bodies that are required under legislations. So the city has those are agencies and they have boards that oversee them. There are others that might be created for a particular policy objective. So we have theaters under Toronto Live. So those are something that the city has chosen to create. There are also community-based agencies such as arenas and community centers. So there's quite a range. And in terms of corporations, they can also be created to have to limit legal liability or have distance for other reasons. The Toronto Community Housing Corporation is an example of a city corporation, as is Toronto Hydro, which also has a mandate to provide a dividend or revenue to the city. So these agencies have delegated authority from council. They have boards that are their governing authority, and those boards are given an extent of authority that city council provides, and city council retains some authority over them as well, such as the authority to appoint the board members, for example. Next slide. And as I mentioned about our accountability officers that provide important oversight and that are required under legislation, and to just go through those, we have an Auditor General that assists City Council in holding itself and its administration accountable for public funds and value for money. We have an Integrity Commissioner that provides advice to both members of council as well as members of boards that are appointed by council around codes of conduct, and the Integrity Commissioner also receives complaints and responds to those, sometimes with investigations and reports, and provides education to help members comply with the code of conduct. The Lobbyist Registrar oversees a required lobbyist registry that's required under statute, and also promotes transparency and integrity, both through managing that registry, but also supporting education and advice to potential lobbyists, as well as to elected officials and staff around the requirements under the lobbying bylaw. And then there is an ombudsman who works to ensure the city treats the public fairly and that services are provided in a fair and equitable manner. The ombudsman investigates complaints and is able to primarily investigate on systemic issues, not on individual issues, but when there is a number of complaints that may point to a systemic issue, then the ombudsman will undertake investigations on that, as well as provide advice based on their investigations for how agencies, corporations, and city divisions can improve how they provide fair service. Okay, next slide. So as was mentioned, and I won't spend too much time on these, but this committee is a part of a set of council advisory bodies that have been created so far this term. More can be created. That's at council's discretion, and the committees operate in similar manners in terms of procedures and appointments with different mandates. Next slide. And as mentioned, the role of this committee is to provide advice to council along certain principles, including the implementation of the principles of the International Decade for People of African Descent, as well as on the elimination of barriers faced by Black communities and to help improve access, including with engagement with other orders of government and other partners, to ensure the interests and needs of Black communities are reflected in city programs and service delivery, and to advise on emerging issues and trends of significance to Black communities. Next slide. So you'll be hearing a bit more in the next item about procedures, but the overall governance is outlined in the terms of reference, and that refers to the procedures. But some of the key principles are that the meetings are all open, will be open to the public and complying with open meeting requirements under the City of Toronto Act, and that there'll be a minimum number of meetings a year, and that there will be support, as has been outlined from various divisions, including the City Clerk's office. Next slide. And these are just some further resources. There are other links earlier in the slide deck that you have in your agenda, and I encourage you to look at these links. And there is also an orientation guide that was provided as part of this item. And I think it might feel a bit overwhelming to review all of this at the start of your time, but you might find that these are important to come back to 3-4 meetings in where you might connect the dots between some of what these resources are providing and what you're starting to see in your role. Okay, and then last slide. I think that's it. Okay, so I'm happy to take questions.
Thank you, Sonali. Any questions of the presenter? Okay. Wali Kagali?
Thank you so much for that presentation. My question to you is, you referred to our recommendations and advice primarily going to the executive committee of council, and you referenced there's agencies and corporations of the city. So does that, if we have advice, for example, to Toronto Community Housing, when it relates to housing, for example, does that advice come from the executive committee to Toronto Community Housing? Could you just elaborate on how that interaction happens? Thank you so much.
Sure, absolutely. So your advice would go through an item that the committee has taken a decision on, and then would proceed to executive committee, and then executive committee would either pass that on or add anything further that they might consider to City Council, and it would be through a City Council decision that either a request or usually in a corporation it would transmit as a request, but in an agency it might transmit as direction. So City Council has more authority over agencies and a little bit less over corporations, but the mechanism is from City Council to an agency or corporation, but the flow is your committee to executive to council for consideration.
Any further questions? No. Okay, Mr. William.
Thanks so much, Sonali, for the good presentation. I have 3 questions, although you answered one during your presentation. I just wanted a clarification whether the City of Toronto works with other lower municipalities, because this has an effect on how services are delivered at the community level, or whether it is a single tier. Then the other question is on accountability officers. I know you have explained much about this, but who is responsible for social accountability in terms of social service delivery? Is it the ombudsman? And then the last one, are members of this committee eligible for appointment on other standing committees of the city? Thank you.
Okay. So I'll do those in order. And I understood your first question to be whether the city collaborates or works with other municipalities. So there are bodies that the city is a member of. And an example would be the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So that's a national body of which municipalities are members. And there are councillors who are selected by council or the mayor to participate, and you know, there are reports available in terms of their discussions. There is also an association of Ontario municipalities, and the city has had a varying level of participation over the last 10 or 15 years with that entity, in part because of some intent to distinguish Toronto's role. It has its own legislation, and it also has its own intergovernmental relationship. So Toronto has the ability to have direct discussions with the province and with the federal government, but with all other municipalities, they're a part of this collective to have those intergovernmental discussions. But there has been times where Toronto has participated more so with those municipalities, and in the last council term, the city manager was quite intent in terms of participating with Greater Toronto and Hamilton area municipalities on certain matters. So it's an answer that does evolve and change in terms of the kinds of partnerships and entities that Toronto is involved in. I think your second question, I hope this is the right order, was around accountability. And I would say that the accountability for social services delivery rests with the public service and the division heads that have that mandate. So for example, there's a division called Employment and Social Services, and they do the delivery for Ontario Works related programs and other employment services. That division has accountability that the city council has delegated to that division head, including to meet legislative requirements. And there's other examples of that, such as, like, you know, the Shelter Support and Housing Administration. That division has accountability. What the ombudsman will do is, when there are complaints of a systemic nature that in the delivery of those services things are not being delivered fair and equitably, then the ombudsman may investigate and provide the results of that to council for the purposes of addressing and improving that kind of service delivery. So it's not the ombudsman who's accountable for the service delivery, but provides a mechanism for those complaints and for an independent report to go to council. Could you remind me of your last question?
Yeah, the last question was asking whether members of this committee are eligible for appointment on standing committees of the council.
Right. So the standing committees are composed only of members of council. They don't have public members, and neither do community councils. And I believe that there's one can only, in terms of where there is eligibility for public members, which is both advisory bodies as well as community boards or those agency boards, you can only be appointed to one of those at any one time.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from members? Okay, seeing none. Speakers on the item? Okay, seeing none. And I'm going to ask Mr. William to move this item. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you, Sonali. The next item is item CR 1.4, meeting processes and the simplified rules of procedure. And Gary Clark, Committee Administrator, City Clerk's Office, is here to give a presentation. Are you online? Oh, you're right here.
That made it easy, didn't it?
I was thinking you're on my screen. Go ahead.
All right. Could everyone hear me okay? Excellent. Okay. Let me share for you all. Can you see this, everyone?
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. All right. Good morning, everyone. It's very glad to be here this morning and to see all of you online and in person as well. So like many other meetings you will attend, the meetings of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee are structured according to a set of rules. So the council advisory committees, such as this one, use the simplified rules of procedures. Simplified means that they are pared down versions of City Council's rules and procedures based on the same principles and tailored to the needs of an advisory committee. So in terms of the principles that form the basis of the simplified rules, as well as the city council procedures, the members' rights are listed on this slide. It is expected that members of an advisory committee come to the table with different viewpoints. These principles safeguard the rights of all members to participate equally in the meeting. Another principle, one that is enshrined in law, is that all of the decision-making takes place in public, and this was mentioned a couple of times before. So the public may attend any meeting in person or virtually, and may submit written comments or present to the committee on any item on its agenda. The agenda serves as notice of the meeting. Only items included on the agenda may be discussed, as the public has received notice only of these items. Members may not conduct business, materially advance the progress on any agenda item outside of the meeting itself. All meetings must begin and end in public, but that doesn't mean that they must always be public from beginning to end. There are about a dozen circumstances set out in the City of Toronto Act that would make it appropriate for a committee to close its meeting, and a couple of these are listed here. So for example, personal matters about an identifiable individual, including a city employee or a local board employee, and litigation or potential litigation affecting the city. So in terms of the role of the chair, sitting right beside me here, the simplified rules set out the role of the chair and the vice chairs. Essentially, for the chair, or in the chair's absence, the vice chair assures that the progression of business by ensuring that the agenda items are fully considered and decided upon, and that order and decorum is maintained. The vice chair to be elected is the next item of business. All public members are eligible to serve as vice chair. So responsibility of members. The simplified rules set out the responsibilities of members during a meeting listed here on this slide. If you recall, as mentioned before, one of the foundational principles that underpin the rules is that all members have equal rights, privileges, and obligations. This sets out the obligations. In terms of the order of business, there is an order of business that you will see on every agenda, including the one before you today. The chair will call for the confirmation of minutes from the previous meeting. You will have an opportunity to review them online, obviously not today because this is the first meeting of the term. Us here in City Clerks will do our best to get the minutes posted no more than 2 days following a meeting. So there is a meeting agenda for today. The agenda lists the items of business in the order which they will be considered, and also serves as public notice of the committee's business. The committee secretary prepares and publishes and distributes an agenda for each meeting. Agendas are published online to the city's TMMIS website, and we'll also send you a link once the agenda for a meeting is available. You are also encouraged to sign up for automatic e-alerts to receive notifications that pertain to the committee, including when an agenda has been published. City agendas take a little getting used to, but they contain lots of information, including links to all of the documents that have been submitted for a meeting. The simplified rules establish how an item could be added to an agenda. You, as committee members, may add items to the agenda. If you have an idea for an item, reach out to the program staff, which you were introduced to at the beginning of the meeting, from this unit, or us in the city clerk's office, and we can help you finalize your item with respect to both content and form, and make sure it fits within the scope of the committee's mandate. Agenda items may also be placed on the agenda. Each agenda item has a unique identifier, and it is a combination of the committee code, in this case for us as CR, and the meeting number, and this is meeting number 1, and the agenda item order. Many items are relevant to the city as a whole. Some items are word-specific and pertain to something happening at a specific address. In those cases, you will see a ward number. This alerts city councilors to issues that might affect their constituencies. Some items originate with a report or a letter. If you, as a member of the committee, would like to bring forward an item for the agenda, a way to do that would be to submit a letter prior to the agenda closing date with a summary of your item and any recommendations you would like the committee to adopt. Lastly, some items have recommendations for the committee to consider and vote on. The summary provides a bit of history or context for the item. On each item, there's an ordered process for disposing of each item. The chair brings the item forward. There may be a staff presentation offered by a city official, such as what we're going through today. There may also be public speakers who have registered to address the committee. Committee members may ask questions of the public presenters if you wish. Members may ask questions of staff and speaking to the item, which is also your opportunity to move motions. Of all of these processes, only the first and the last must take place. The item has to be called forward and the committee must vote. All right. How do council advisory bodies give advice? So I think this was mentioned before by Sonali. The committee must vote because there must be a direction on every item. Through its decisions, the committee fulfills its role as a council advisory body. In terms of motions, every item must be dealt with by motion in one of the following ways. So to receive an item for information is to acknowledge the matter and take no further action. To defer the item to a future meeting is to postpone consideration until a specific time or until a specific condition is met. To adopt the recommendation is to approve the main proposal as presented. Again, this will usually be in the form of a recommendation. To amend or add a new recommendation is to vary the main proposal or propose an additional item, additional action. Motions to amend are substantive. We need those in advance when possible. City clerk staff help draft with your permission and will seek input from the program staff if necessary. The proposals must fall within the scope of the committee's mandate, must be typed, displayed, and should be read aloud so the proposal is clear to everyone. In terms of voting, voting is one of the responsibilities all members have. In a virtual setting, members will continue to vote by show of hands on video or may request a recorded vote. If a recorded vote is requested in a WebEx meeting, the clerk will call out the names of each member and the member will state in favor or opposed. In terms of other meeting matters, as we discussed, the committee has 14 members and 8 must be present for quorum. A point that Antoinette raised, but is worth repeating. If you're going to be absent, please let us know so we can prepare a motion for someone to move and to excuse any absenteeism. All right, so we're trying to go paperless as best as possible. So agendas and minutes will be available online. Without note or comment, we only record decisions taken by motion. We do not keep track of the discussions that led to the decision. You can subscribe to e-updates as mentioned before to receive an email with a link to the agenda and minutes as soon as they are posted. And obviously, if you have any questions for this committee, for myself, from the city clerk's office, you could contact me. And the committee secretary is Jennifer Pitt, but for now, please keep the questions to me. That's all I have.
And thank you, Gary, who's sitting right beside me. Any questions for the clerks? Wally Kugali?
Thank you for that presentation. It's very clear that you have to have 10 days notice before agenda items are considered. My question is, under what circumstances can an agenda item be brought to the advisory committee without that notice provision? Has that happened? Is that allowed under any conditions? So just want more clarity on that.
We try to follow that structure as best as possible, but if there's a special exception, please let us know and we will consider it. We will obviously ensure that it's fine with the chair, because what we do is all agenda items, after they're published, we have a chair's briefing. So if that item comes after that time, then it will need special consideration. But we do our best if there's something outside of that window.
Also, to just add to that, it's public facing, so the public knows what's on the agenda. So if they have an interest in it, they can come and depute at the committee or submit something to us. So it's one of the reasons why we do that. Not only this committee, but really all committees across the city. Any other questions? No? I do have a few. In regards to members who call in through video conference, when they're voting, must the video be on?
That's our understanding, yes.
Okay. You didn't say that.
Yes.
Oh, did you? Okay. And you mentioned agenda closing. So agenda closing is 2 days before the meeting, you mentioned? What's the timeline, sorry?
It's usually 5 days.
5 days, okay.
Yes.
And according to my expert here, she mentioned that it's this committee is actually co-chaired, isn't it? There's not a vice chair.
Well, according to the simplified rules that's been passed this term, it's a bit of clarification between co-chair and vice chair. So for all council advisory bodies, we're trying to move to a vice chair structure. That's written in the new simplified rules. So it's attached to this presentation. A copy of the simplified rules are there.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So sorry for the confusion, everyone. When we created the terms of reference for the inaugural CABRAC, we used a co-chair model. So if things have shifted, okay, so that's not our understanding, but we will proceed as though it's a vice chair and work with the clerk and the counselor and whomever you elect to clarify that moving forward. Okay.
Thank you. Any further questions? Anyone online? Okay, seeing none. Any speakers on this item? Seeing none. Then I'm going to ask Lucinda Rakatova to move this item.
I move this item.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor? All opposed? Carried. Thank you. And the next item we've all been waiting for. Item 1.5. And I have a special script, I believe, for that.
Sorry, Counselor, while you get your special script, my team has just alerted me to when the terms of reference was approved for this year, it was with a co-chair. Okay, so you are electing a co-chair.
Okay. Okay, is there anyone here to speak to this item? Okay. 1 second. So I was told there's 2 members here who are interested in being a co-chair. Lucina Rakatova and Efia Tikia Annan. Is that correct? And let's go ahead.
Sorry, I didn't know that you had to show interest prior to the meeting, so I thought it was going to happen at the meeting. So I'd like to put my name forward as well.
Okay. So we have 3 members who have shown interest. All right. Sorry, go ahead.
Could the member please say his name?
Oh.
Introduce myself. My name is Walid Kogali Ali.
Sorry.
Thank you.
One moment. Thanks. Getting some clarification. So we do have 3 people who are showing interests. Just, you know, historically though, we have tried to have gender parity, but just as an FYI, which is fine. But any member could put their name forth. So you may have 5 minutes to speak as to why we'd like to be the co-chair. And I'll start with Lucina.
I mean, the expression of interest is closed.
Sorry. You know what? I'm only looking at the script now. I'm being totally transparent, so give me a moment. Okay. Yeah, so any other person showing interest on this item who wants to be co-chair? Going once? Going twice? Okay, and it's closed. All right, so 3 people on the list, Lucina, Efia, and Walid. So you have 5 minutes to speak each to the committee as to why you'd like to be the co-chair. And I'll start with Lucina.
Thank you, Councillor. So I didn't really prepare anything today. I'll just speak from what's on my heart and mind. So in terms of my introduction, I'm really coming into the space with a public health lens, and I guess what I want to proceed with this committee is to have somewhat of a health in all policies approach. So recognizing that Black health is impacted in all sectors, and concurrently having an upstream approach and a structural change approach to the policies and the changes that I want to see kind of move forward with this committee. So I just wanted to sort of put that out there. I do have some experience more so at the federal level, looking at structural change and policy and anti-racist initiatives. And some of the priorities that I mentioned in my introduction include housing affordability, equality, placemaking, sociocultural resilience. Also climate resilience, I think, is an emerging area that is important to be looking at. I also have experience from a community development perspective. So my education was, my public health education was complemented with community development, like praxis and anti-oppressive praxis in that space. So I have a keen, I guess, awareness and desire to balance structural interventions with community-based funding and asset strengthening, and ensuring that our communities are supported, and honoring and recognizing grassroots efforts and organizing that's occurring on the ground. And I think this committee is an excellent vehicle to bring those concerns forward as well, and to see concrete change sort of manifest in the motions that we're putting forward. Yeah, I think think overall, like I view the role of co-chair as something that's very collaborative. So I'm not, I'm going into this with the intent of drawing on everybody's expertise and experience. And I am relatively new to Toronto. I come from the prairies, grew up in a very white centric space in education, but I'm coming into the space hoping to draw on the expertise and, like I said, experience of everyone here and leveraging those connections to address the priorities that everybody has on their minds. So I just wanted to stress that, and I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does any members have any questions for Lucinda? Go ahead, Mr. William.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Lucina. My question is only one. As a co-chair of this committee, how are you going to address the employment equity for Black people at the City of Toronto?
I think that's a very important question. It's a good question. I think reaching out to trusted community figures who are working that space is probably the first step, so that we have an understanding of the immediate supports that folks are needing. I think working conditions for people who are already in positions and jobs, and especially in essential work, is just as important to ensure that those spaces are safe and healthy for folks, and they have adequate, sick leave or conditions of essentially equitable conditions to remain in those jobs. So I think both retention as well as recruitment is important. But ultimately, I think we need to look at it from a structural lens as well. So the policies in our recruitment, making sure that non-biased hiring and culturally appropriate assessment boards and recruitment boards. But I'm thinking primarily of being very structural in our approach, but also looking at the immediate barriers by and through trusted community leaders and organizations who are working on the ground. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, thank you so much. You say your name and Kathy. Thank you, Kathy. Question for, go ahead, Lucina. Make sure your mic is on. Just press the red button. Make sure the red button is right. Thank you. We have people online who needs to hear you as well.
Thank you so much for your presentation. You mentioned that you work collaboratively. Can you explain a little bit more about what collaboration and working collaboratively means?
Yeah, for sure. I think for me, it all starts with listening and active listening. In most spaces in my life, I'm more of a listener than a talker. So to be coming forward, it's very daunting. I'm very anxious about it, to be honest. But I think for me, collaboration is all about knowing when to step up and to step back, giving space to have people express what's on their hearts, what's on their minds. It's about acknowledging your privilege. So ultimately giving space in the room, letting people voice their ideas, their concerns, and bringing those to the table in a concrete way, not really leaving anybody behind. And I think just dialogue, just as much talking as we can do and as much sharing as we can do, and building that rapport, I think, on an interpersonal level as well, not just always getting down to business. I think that's the most basic and human thing that we can do, especially in this really sometimes mentally difficult work. So I think listening, talking is the foundation of that. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, Lucina. And next is Effia. You have 5 minutes to present to the committee.
All right, so at this point, I believe it's, still morning. Okay, so my name is Afia, and I would like to be in this position because I am doing the work that's currently needed in terms of the grassroots support. In my role, we do work with youth who are looking for employment, and we're not talking about precarious work. We're talking about lifelong careers that are sustaining, that help the youth and people who look like us further their lives and give them the socioeconomic status that they need in order to make changes. Oftentimes what we're finding is that we're having clients come in and they don't have the money to do what they need to do. They don't have housing, they don't have the mental health supports, and they don't have the education to change the trajectory of their lives. And I work with those clients on a daily basis. I understand what it takes. I'm not new to leadership, and I think in this role it would be a leadership role as well. In fact, I actually just completed a Black Leaders course put on by Elevator, and in that it was just reaffirming negotiation skills, listening skills, active listening skills, and being able to understand what it means to lead, to listen to people, to make sure everybody's heard and therefore feels respected, and to take the necessary steps to present what we feel as a committee to those who need to hear what we need to say, and to get the things that we need moved. We deal with underhoused. As we all know, the housing list is extremely long, and trying to figure out how to help people find other means of housing, other means of food supports, other means of employability. And so I want you all to take a chance on me. I am relatively young, but I am looking for the opportunity to grow into what I feel like I could be and to represent the city in the best way that I know that I can. I'm here to listen, I'm here to learn. I'm also looking to, like I said, be mentored by all of you, because all of you are here for a reason, and you've all been in fields that maybe I don't have experience in, but would love to learn more about. And so, yeah, I think that's all for me.
Thank you, Afia. Any questions for Afia? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. William.
And this can't go without being asked questions. Yes, thank you so much. Could you please provide us a practical example of what you have done, you as an individual, to assist the youth in employment readiness and access to jobs?
Okay, so in my role, I'm also the employment counselor. So what happens is we have youth come in who have criminal records, so they've been incarcerated, which is a huge barrier, as you've mentioned earlier, a huge barrier. And so our job is to try and get them employment. As I said, we're not looking for precarious employment, instead we're looking for careers. So we've teamed up with organizations like Whiteboard Collective and an app called Spot Work. What happens is that the youth will come in, put all their identifications in. If they don't have identification, because that's also a barrier, we help them obtain those things. And then they go into the system and they're able to access jobs. So it's like a job data bank, and these employers understand that these youth are coming from conflict with the law and things like that. And so they're willing to employ these youth. We have partnerships with the trades union. My past employment was actually at a construction union. And so having conversations with them, letting them understand that you guys need workers, we have the workers, but here they come with something. So I do that actively on a daily basis. In fact, when I go back to work today, I actually have to help a youth apply for a job that he's looking to do part-time outside of school. So I'm very well versed in that. That's what I do on a daily basis. As I said, money makes the world go round. It's an international language, and in order to get money, you need to work to obtain money, and we want to make sure that we're helping the youth become employed.
Any other questions? Okay. Go ahead.
I will ask you, Effie, the same question that I asked Lucinda. So how do you view collaboration, and how will you collaborate with the members of this committee in the issues that we are addressing?
I view collaboration as an important part of any decision-making process. We all have ideas, and it's up to us to present our idea and why we believe what we believe, and state our passion for it, and our information and our background as to why we believe what we believe. As co-chair, I would listen to everyone's point of view, make sure everyone has an opportunity to express their points of view, and then make sure that when we're voting that everyone is okay with that decision, and if not, figure out ways to remedy that. Collaboration, nothing can move without it, especially in City Council, we know that. It's not one person's decision, and we all need to understand why things are chosen and why we go in the directions that we do. And so, as I said earlier, making sure everyone feels heard, and those who had a different point of view understand why we're moving in the direction that we are moving in.
Okay, thank you. And Waleed, you have 5 minutes to present to the committee.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for considering my nomination to be one of the co-chairs. I'm going to quickly start off by talking about why I'm passionate about confronting anti-Black racism, specifically systemically. And then I'm going to conclude by talking about my skills and my experience to help this body. So as a student, as a newcomer, when I was at the University of Toronto, one of the most impactful events that I helped organize with my good friend Kofi Hope, and actually our Deputy Mayor Asma Malik was part of this work, was something called Black Youth Coalition Against Violence. And what we did is we brought high school students from Regent Park, from Lawrence Heights, from all communities to the University of Toronto to imagine the possibility of, higher education or upskilling your skills. And this was during the Sum of the Gun, where we lost a lot of people in our city. I then became president of the Students' Union at the University of Toronto Mississauga Students' Union, where I worked with Black students and other racialized students in advocating for systemic policy changes at the institutional level to address the needs of marginalized students, food insecurity being one of them. I then got involved in the environmental movement. And I actually served as a consultant first to help set up TTC Riders, which is the transit advocacy organization. You folks might see them on TV a lot. So that was one of my first projects. I then was asked to serve on the board of Toronto Environmental Alliance, where I served as its treasurer and later on as its president or chair of the board. And one of the learnings from the environmental movement was how many people did not associate Blackness with environmentalism. And that's because there were not many Black community leaders in the environmental movement. And one of the core messages that I tried to deliver to everyone, all stakeholders in the environmental movement, is racial justice is a prerequisite to environmental justice. You have to understand the racial component of environmental policies and the impact on the global South. So those are my experiences in various sectors. I actually joined the labor movement as well and supported the United Way and its anchor agencies. And I've been actively supporting grassroots organizations and charities, specifically organizations that focus on mental health. The most latest, I'm a big fan and support of WANASA, which provides culturally appropriate supports for marginalized members of our community. I then got involved with the community benefit efforts in Regent Park. So I serve as the resident co-chair of the Community Benefits Oversight Working Group that's helping the community decide how to spend $26.8 million in community benefits. I just got appointed as the interim chair of Neighborhood Legal Services that helps me understand the legal frameworks and also the challenges that we face within the legal system, especially when it comes to racialized members of our community, specifically Black youth and Black families. And I'm also the co-chair of the social development plan, the Regent Park Social Development Plan, that received $2.5 million in city funding, $500,000 every single year, to promote the goal of social cohesion and inclusion. And the reason why I'm so passionate about this work is because it's where change actually happens. It happens on the ground. It happens in deliberations such as our body. So why am I putting my name forward? Is I have a lot of experience being a facilitator. I have collaborated with members of various groups or committees, and I know the work doesn't happen at the meetings. It happens in between meetings. It happens prior to the meetings. And I'm hoping to leverage my skill set to help our advisory committee succeed by working with each one of you to achieve our mandate. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for for Waleed?
Of course.
Mr. William?
Thank you so much. My dearest neighbor here, you've been in the community for quite some time. What do you see the biggest problem of the black youth, and how are you going to use the co-chair position to address that problem?
Excellent question. Well, I was exposed to literature very early on that basically proved that there is systemic anti-black racism. One of the first reports that I read was Poverty by Postal Code, and that was so shocking because it wasn't what was written in the report, but it was hearing from youth who put on an application for a job, but did not get an interview because of their name or because of the postal code they lived in. So that was my exposure while I worked at supporting the United Way of Greater Toronto. And later on, I've been mentoring youth. That's one of the things that I'm proud of. I've supported youth start their own organizations, grassroots organizations, or help them find a mentor in their field so they could succeed. One of the biggest challenges is the lack of intentional support for black youth. And I think that work needs to continue. I'm a big fan of C, that my good friend Dr. Kofi Hope started, because it was empowering our youth through the skill set, to help them with their skill set, but also with mentorship and a pathway to a career that, that they're passionate about. And we need to make sure that our governments, that the non-for-profit sector, invests in those solutions that are called by the community. So I think we have a lot of work to do to support our youth, especially in the current economic conditions, and especially after the pandemic, which has altered how everything is done. And I see value in conversations at the advisory committee to inform, but also support the committees of council, the agencies and corporations implement policies and practices that encourage the participation of black youth, as well as other racialized youth and marginalized members of our community. Hope that answers your question.
Sorry, my apologies. Go ahead.
So I'm going to ask you the same question I've asked everybody else. And so you've sat on a number of different committees you have mentioned. And so in co-chairing other committees and in the committees you've been a member of, can you give a concrete example of how you have worked collaboratively with the committees in order to help advance the mandate of those committees? And how would you apply that here?
Excellent question. I feel that every member of this advisory committee is an immense asset to not just the community, the black community, but the entire city of Toronto because of their lived experience, because of their skills. So as co-chair, what I will do is, and I'll make this commitment right now, is work with each member of the advisory committee to ensure that your passion or your goals for the advisory committee are part of our collective vision and our collective goals, so that no member is left behind, so that a member who chooses to participate is engaged because their goals are part of our work plan, are part of our discussions. So that's one thing. Second thing is, it's about also building relationships. I want to be your best friends, to be honest. I want to be friends with each one of you. And that's because when we have a relationship based on trust, we can work much more cohesively, right? So I think it's important for us to understand where we're coming from and where we want to go. And the other thing is to work closely with my fellow co-chair, with the amazing staff that support this important work to make sure that their perspectives, their ideas are also part of the conversation, and also to listen to their wisdom, right? They've been navigating other spaces that we may not be familiar with, so it's also to learn and apply that learning in the work that we do. So collaboration, in my opinion, it's not rhetoric, it's action, it's being intentional, it's working with every member of the advisory committee to achieve our collective goals. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Seeing no other speakers, we'll continue. So this is what we're going to do. This in the previous session of this committee, there was only one person who actually put their name forth, and that was a unanimous vote. So this time around, we have 3 people who are interested, which is great. So the clerk is going to is going to do the voting, and the plan is, and you will elaborate.
So we're going to do a balloting for your votes. So we're going to have all the candidates listed. You get 1 vote, and you'll submit your ballot either in favor or opposed to each person who is a candidate. So we need roughly about
10 minutes.
10 minutes
Yeah.
to set this up for you.
Okay. So the members online, you will email the clerk, Mr. Clark, your vote of the candidate that you would like to see as co-chair. And as he mentioned, we will prepare a ballot, and each person will have one, and you can choose one of the 3 members who's put the names forth. So we'll take a 10-minute recess. You want to add something?
I have a question.
Well, he needs to prepare it. So I don't know if he needs to help manage. Sorry, there is one question. Before we go to recess, sorry, there's one question from Mr. William. Go ahead, Mr. William.
Yeah, I was thinking now that candidates know that there are 3 of them and we are few members. Maybe there could be those ones who want to withdraw their interest.
Well, no one's indicated that, so that's fine.
And then in a situation that someone wants to abstain from voting.
Yeah, anyone can abstain from voting, of course, just not mark anyone on your ballot. Everyone will receive a ballot, and you can spoil your ballot, or you can choose one person. All right? So we'll be back at 5:02, if that clock is correct. 11:55. Sit on the desk. I'm looking at you. Sitting on the desk like that. I'll call you mother next time. Anyways, we have the ballots prepared. I'm just looking at it now. Thank you. So the ballot has the 3 names on it. And it reads, ballot to elect one member as vice chair of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee. I was co-chair, but let it pass. Candidates Wally Gogali Ali, Lucina Rakotovo, Ifia Tekia Anan. And it says here, I vote for, and it has 1. Please print candidate name, your name, and your signature. Okay? So the clerks will hand that out. And for those that are online, please email one of the 3 names to the clerk. Do they have that information?
They do.
You send them the ballot?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the ballots are being handed out now. It's not really a secret ballot, but at City Hall, we try to be forward-facing and transparent. Ask away. You vote for one person. Vote for yourself. Well, vote for the person that. Vote for the person. So the names are on the ballot. Oh, sorry. Okay. So yes. So Walid, please raise your hand. Lucina, raise your hand. Where's Lucina? Yeah, raise your hands high so we all see it. Make sure those in the camera also see. Those at home, can you see? And Ifia, raise your hand. Okay. If those at home have any questions, please let the clerk know. The clerk is behind you. Do you mind? Again, because this is a public meeting and everything here is public procedures, the name of the candidate and the person who voted for them will also be said out loud for the sake of transparency. We'll give the clerks a few minutes to gather all the ballots online and in the room, and then tally the ballots, and then we will, he'll read it out when he has all the ballots. Thank you. So just to add to the complexity of all of this, if there is a tie, then the person who with the least amount of votes will be dropped off, and then we'll have a second round of voting. Okay? Clearly, I've done this before.
Question, Chair. So are the votes for the people voting online already in? Because we have people online, right?
Yes, that's correct. So they emailed their ballot to the clerk.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they've all submitted their votes online already. So while we're waiting, I was going to say that in the interest of time, I'm going to ask the committee to defer item 6 to the next meeting. We'll vote on that. And then we'll proceed to item 7. And it will be an overview of an update on the Toronto Action Plan to confront anti-Black racism. And it will be presented by Kimba.
Good afternoon, everyone. We have the first round of ballots. Lucina Rokotova has 5 votes, and Walid Ali has 4 votes. Efia Taki Anam has 3 votes. So we are going to go to no one get the majority of the votes. In total, we have 12 votes. Yeah, so now we are going to go to the second round of votes. Balloting, we will exclude the one with the least votes. Now we only have 2 people on the list. We will distribute the balloting again. Yeah, so for now, for the time being now, we can go to the next item to discuss the next item while we are preparing for the balloting. Thank you, everyone.
Question. Hello, I have a question.
Okay.
So thank you for the results. How much the majority of votes should an individual have to go through? Because now we have 4, 5, 3. So what is the majority, the number?
7.
Yeah.
7, yeah. So now we are going to the second round of balloting, and now on the list there are only 2 people instead of 3.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
So 7 is the majority. All right. We will go through a second round. But, you know, as clerk, should we, 1 second. Okay, we'll go to the next item while the clerks is preparing the ballot. So let's move on to we'll hold item 5, and we'll go to item 6, and I'm going to ask for deferral. All those in favor of deferral for item 6? All those opposed? Carried. Item 7. One moment. So item 7 is an overview, an overview and update on the Toronto Action Plan to confront anti-Black racism. And the presentation by Kemba, Acting Manager, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit, Social Development and Finance Administration. So go ahead, Kemba, where are you at? Here you go, in front of me.
I will be joined by Dr. Kwatu Kenti, who will lead this offering.
First few slides.
There you go. Make sure your mic is on and speak into the mic. Thank you.
I think clerks is just, pulling up the slides.
Uploading the slides. So thank you so much for this opportunity to welcome you formally to the advisory committee and to actually begin the work. It's very important work, driving efforts to improve equity, access, and representation of Black voices, experiences, and issues here at City Hall. It can never be overstated given the starting points across all sectors, from education, health, criminal justice to employment and social services. Today we want to provide you with some background, some context, an overview of the Toronto Plan to serve as foundations for your dispensation of sage advice to City Council on existing gaps, opportunities, and issues. Your input will inform strategies during this 5th year of the current action plan, as well as inform the development of what promises to be an exciting 10-year plan. We're developing a 10-year plan, and there's many reasons for that, which we'll get into. But by way of inspiration for the work that you're about to do, I want to remind you that some of our outstanding scholars recognized more than 100 years ago that a lot of critical work addressing anti-Black racism must be done at the municipal level. And one of them was W.E.B. Du Bois, who did his seminal doctoral work on conditions in Philadelphia. And he wrote, and I quote, just as a starting point to get us out the gate fast, he said, and this is more than 100 years ago, to people just like you, addressing severe conditions that Black people were facing in Philadelphia. He said, and I quote, "Now is the accepted time, not tomorrow, not some convenient season. It is today that our best work can be done, and not some future day or future year." And we had an exercise at the outset where we talked about what you hope for. And my hope is that the deliberations of this advisory committee will be standard setting for the Western Hemisphere in terms of how a city addresses anti-Black racism, how it thinks about anti-Black racism, and how it reduces disparities that are caused by anti-Black racism. Whether it's able to reduce anti-Black racism, that's a huge global project, but whether it succeeds in reducing the disparities, the inequities that occur as a result of anti-Black racism is a very concrete and practical point with which I'd like to start you. Next. Yeah, so we are in the 5th year of a 5-year plan, which directly has, I guess, about a decade of history behind it, but actually 50 years of prior reports, multiple efforts of advocacy, But it was in March 2016, through the efforts, the activities, the dedication of the Black Lives Matter movement, that this current work began, and where we have the concrete precursors to your advisory committee's work. That led to the Mayor's Community Roundtable on Anti-Black Racism in October 2016, citywide workshop involving 41 community conversations in 2017, and finally the 2018 to 2022 implementation plan, which we will sort of walk you through today. At the outset and throughout, and subsequent to now, there's been open dialogue held with communities, an examination of opportunities and challenges for action, and very intense discussion and debate about how to address some of the black communities' multiple challenges. Next. And I'm trying to be concise and tight because I realize we're running so late. We are building on a very successful public education campaign, the Toronto for All campaign, one of the first efforts globally to address racism and discrimination across all segments of black communities. Gender, faith, class, all the intersectionalities. One of the sort of distinguishing features of the work that began earlier and continues to this day. Next. The action plan, unanimously approved on December 5th, 2017, is a 5-year plan with 22 recommendations and 80 actions across 5 thematic areas. And I just want to articulate them because they're so important. Children and youth development, health and community services, job opportunities and income supports, policing and the justice sector, community engagement and black leadership. With year 5, which we are currently in, prioritizing the following. Number 1, advancing culture change, targeting services, programs and services, targeting services and programs, economic prosperity and community funding, community safety, justice and well-being. And you can tell that some of these different sectors and fields were identified by many of you when you introduced yourselves. And what I want to say in terms of sort of understanding the scope and scale of the work that we're striving to do is the concept of Ubuntu. Ubuntu really helps to guide us because your mind can only remember 7 at a time anyway, 7 points, 7 bullets, 7 paragraphs. So I just gave you 11, but Ubuntu speaks to the interconnectedness of black experiences and the interconnectedness of challenges to progress in the struggle to address anti-black racism. And that interconnectedness really reveals that they're all important. All these issues are important. Criminal justice is important. Education is important. Social services is important. Child welfare is important. Your job will be to think through, they're all important, but if everything is important, what do you get done? Where do you make your mark? Where do you make a difference? And that's within the context of a quickly or rapidly changing world. And when things change rapidly geopolitically, anti-black racism also evolves. It's not static. So you'll be facing new challenges throughout the next year that I can't or you can't even anticipate now, because that's the world we're living in. And I ground you in the concept of Ubuntu, because that's what we've been grounded in our work, the Ubuntu framework. And we'd be very glad throughout to give you reminders as to what Ubuntu means and how to use this concept when you haven't, you can't get a consensus. Here's Ubuntu to sort of guide you through that democratic process to consensus. Finally, in terms of operationalizing the plan, each person here probably has their own experiential-based definition of anti-black racism.
I get to say next slide.
Yeah, I said next slide. Did it go to the next slide? Oh, there we are. Sorry. All right. Our job as an advisory committee has been to understand, to develop and agree on what is anti-Black racism. That's a very important piece, because defining anti-Black racism is important for understanding, are we succeeding in making changes? If you change the definition of anti-Black racism every year, you'll not be able to understand what difference you're making on it. You have to have a consistent definition that we all speak to in our understanding of the term and the phenomena, and so we can agree when we're being effective or not being effective in addressing it. The plan has sought to advance equity for Black residents, as well as identify and highlight racializing conditions through enhanced awareness, disparity reduction, and through leveraging our role, the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit's role within the city, to drive systems change across policy and practices involving city divisions, agencies, and commissions. I could hardly understate how important that work is. And so I turn it over to Kimber.
Thanks. Thank you so much. Can you hear me? Is it? Yes? Okay, great. So now one of the most challenging areas of this work, of course, is measuring systems change. The plan uses what we call the Ubuntu Impact Assessment Model, which assesses 4 levels of micro and macro impact using community-defined metrics. This approach is used to access change by examining shifts at the individual or interpersonal level, the group level, institutional, and broader shifts in society. Next slide. Our theory of change outlines 9 intervention areas that drive the impact across the 4 spheres of change. We're looking at staff recruitment and advancement. This also includes retention, race-based data to assess impact, gaps, and needs, collaborative service planning, working directly with people of African descent to improve systems and service planning, community investments. This includes partnerships, spaces, and organizational and event funding, as well as targeted space. And on the slide, youth mentorship and employment, which we've spoken to earlier, really prioritizing mentorship and job opportunities for diverse Black youth. Next slide. We continue on our interventions looking at public education. This particular plan started with a partnership with OCASI with the community education through Toronto for All. And we're looking at building capacity, knowledge, and understanding, as well as the application of an anti-Black racism analysis. Looking at policy development, where we develop policy and planning that considers anti-Black racism and the ways it operates and is embedded in our institutions and systems. And we're also looking at intergovernmental advocacy. You all are very important in this. It's important for us to have leadership, not just on the municipal level, but there are very many intergovernmental intervention levels that can be addressed at the provincial and federal levels. And we really see that as an important area of our work. And last but not least, staff learning. In order to really understand anti-Black racism, recognize it, and counteract it in policies, practices, and planning, and program and service delivery as well. Next slide, please. In addition, we also have the Partnership and Accountability Circle, commonly referred to as the PAC, which operates as the CABR unit's main advisory body that really provides us guidance on the implementation of the actions named specifically in the action plan. Similar to this body, they provide expert advice to embed community leadership to inform the delivery of the actions in the action plan. So of course they have more of a narrow scope in their work as compared to this body, as they provide advice directly to our staff. It is composed of 12 community members, and they represent the voices of Black leaders, youth, and Black-led community organizations serving Black residents. Next slide, please. I always, of course, find it helpful to understand the broader ecosystem and structure of advisory bodies, as we saw earlier with Sonali's presentation. So here we have a map of various relationships that CABR engages with, including the 3 arms of our staff team at the unit. We can get into that a little bit later at another time, but we have a community development team, a training development team, and a policy team as well, and they are focused on those different areas. If we look directly above the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit, we have the PAC that I just spoke to. Can we zoom in a bit more on this? And we'll also provide it for reference. Thank you, Karis, Elder Karis. So yes, we have the Partnership and Accountability Circle that I just spoke to, and above that you have your body, the KABRAC, with a broader purview of anti-Black racism items. You really, as an advisory body, directly provides recommendations to council, and we see the bodies of the Partnership and Accountability Circle and the KABRAC as complementary but distinct. Of course, the CABR unit also engages senior staff tables like the Senior Leads Table, which represents staff from city divisions like the TCHC, TPS, and agencies like TCHC, TPS, and TTC, and other city divisions who are charged with implementing the action plan. We also have our Black Staff Network, which looks at supporting professional development, wellness, as well as advocacy for Black staff. They also have divisional chapters to support this work. We closely work with the Housing Secretariat and Black-led partners to take advantage of CMHC Available Black Housing Development Fund to facilitate connections and applications. And lastly, we have 2 engagement sessions with Black Community Housing, the Black Community Housing Advisory Table, also known as BChat, members on the development of the Black Housing Framework, expected to be coming in soon in months. Next slide, please. I want to cover a few highlights because there are so many achievements that we've gone through so far across the 6 thematic areas. When we're looking at service targeting and coordination, we had $1.6 million invested to support early on providers and Black mandated organizations to pilot and expand culturally affirming programming to meet the needs of Black children and families. When we're looking at inclusive economic development, we as a city invested $1 million through the Toronto Main Street Recovery and Rebuild Initiative to deliver revitalization programs and initiatives that support Black-owned and operated businesses in Little Jamaica. Looking at transformative culture change, we increased organizational capacity by training 7,439 staff on anti-Black racism. And when we're looking at recognition and placemaking, we delivered $4 million for the State of Good Repair capital investments to expedite the redevelopment of the NIA Center for the Arts. Oh, I think I missed a slide. My apologies. If we could go to the next slide. And the next slide after that. My apologies, folks. And so just looking at the last 2 thematic areas, when we look at alternate police responses, restorative justice, and repair, we committed $522,000 that was invested to deliver the 911 crisis call division pilot project. Looking at accessible and equitable housing, we supported Black community-led initiatives that address gentrification, displacement, and housing in Black communities, including the funding to the Partner Initiative, Margaret, and CP Planning. Next slide, please. So in terms of our Year 5 priorities, I'll provide a high-level overview of some of the work being done in each area. When we're looking at advancing culture change, this includes the collection of internal and external disaggregated race-based data to inform city planning, targeted changes to address Black staff retention, complaints, and city staff anti-Black racism training, as well as learning opportunities. In looking at targeted services, spaces, and programming, we're prioritizing targeted programs that are connected to outcomes linked to the social determinants of health that many of you spoke to across the areas of housing, food security, education, community services, and community safety. Another important subject that we spoke to, community funding and economic prosperity. We're looking at inclusive economic development approaches to neighborhood planning, things like community benefits, social procurement, community land trust, and anti-displacement policies or initiatives. And lastly, looking at community safety, well-being, and justice, restorative and reparative justice models is what we're focused on, increasing transparency in reporting and communications, and upstream trauma-informed programs like the Toronto Community Crisis Response. As a part of your yes?
Can we have a motion to extend the meeting to the end? William, can you move that motion? Thank you. All those in favor of extension till the end? Thank you. Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Proceed.
As a part of your orientation materials, you received a list of the full list of 34 actions that will fall under these themes that represent the remaining action plan activities to be delivered this year. I should note that many divisions have built their capacity, and there are additional division-led projects that are underway that support the well-being and access of Black staff and residents. We're really excited that our divisions decide to go above and beyond the current action plan. And of course, as Denise will outline, there are many complementary initiatives that may not exclusively focus on Black residents, but directly benefit people of African descent through their disproportionate representation in critical service areas, such as among Toronto's unhoused, low-income population. So we also report on this work in our annual reporting and support the effective implementation of these initiatives where possible. Next slide, please. In addition to Year 5 action, the unit has also developed legacy initiatives. Legacy initiatives address root causes of anti-Black racism in the areas of health, food, housing, neighborhood development, and community funding. These are long-term, collaborative initiatives that provide foundations for enduring transformative change, as well as address the pressures that were magnified by the COVID-19 pandemic. The Toronto Black Food Sovereignty Plan works with public health and closely with the Poverty Reduction Office to provide immediate and long-term action to address chronic Black food insecurity and address anti-Black racism in the food system. In its first year, the plan launched 8 new targeted Black farmers markets to improve fresh food access and facilitated across to kitchen incubation space to support Black businesses. We have our Black mandated funding framework, which provides targeted funding, governance, and leadership training to Black-led and Black-serving grassroots and nonprofit agencies. We also include the Growing in Place initiative that works with city planning and economic development and culture to address policy and planning levers to combat Black displacement in neighborhood redevelopment and planning. And lastly, we have the Black Housing Framework, which is under development with the Housing Secretariat and identifies targeted city initiatives and fosters community-led interventions across the housing spectrum to address poor housing outcomes for Black residents. If we could go to the next slide. As Dr. Kenty mentioned in his opening, we are in the initial phases of developing a new action plan. Approved by City Council this past June, the plan will represent the first 10-year anti-Black racism plan in Canada, with the opportunity to learn from our challenges, mobilize and build on our successes, and begin to create and deepen work in the areas where we see continued need and disparities. For instance, one area we are keen to enhance is support for Black staff, particularly as it relates to retention, mental health supports, and advancements within the corporation. As we come to the end of the UN International Decade for People of African Descent, we're expected to launch our action plan in the 4th quarter of 2024, along with our Year 5 staff report on the current plan. In implementing the principle of Sankofa, we will be reviewing reports from divisions, agencies, and community partners to assess where we are while conducting fulsome engagement with Black communities across the city to inform where we need to go and how we should get there. We are truly delighted to have this group as a resource to inform that work and look forward to bringing a draft plan forward at committee for your feedback. Next slide. On behalf of the unit and Dr. Kenty and Denise, we really want to thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today.
Thank you. Great presentation. Any questions? starting from the
Hi.
far, go ahead. Say your name, please, in advance. We're still learning each other's names, and there's no name tags.
Yeah, my name is May. Thanks for that presentation. There was a part in the presentation that talked about community investment and partnerships, so I was wondering what that process looks like with the Confronting Anti-Black Racism unit, and what kind of makes you decide who to partner with and work with. And if you've done any work with the cultural hotspot that's based, I think, inside of the city of Toronto. And for those that don't know, it's a year-long arts program, and I think they're finishing up the one in Little Jamaica and now moving on to the funding cycle for Jane and Finch. So I was wondering if there's been like any work or collaboration around that, or if it's even possible.
Yeah, so thank you so very much for that question, May. So our funding, so we spoke to earlier the Black mandated funding framework. So that we partner with the community funding unit, which is within our division, and they work with our partners. They're currently working on the second phase of that funding framework, and connected with our partnership in the accountability circle, as well as the Black mandated funding framework, to making sure that we're looking at what funding looks like moving forward. As well, we have partnered with the cultural hotspots in Little Jamaica and in Jane and Finch. This is led by another division, Economic Development and Culture. We were consulted by them to offer impacts on that. And we supported Economic Development and Culture to partner with lead agencies.
Okay, thank you. Mr. William?
Thank you so much. Thank you, Kamba, for that wonderful presentation. I have two questions. One, you have given a presentation that shows very wonderful interventions. I'm trying to ask if you could direct me where I could find information in terms of outcomes, like outcomes of these interventions, in terms of metrics, to guide me, and so how you've been progressing in terms of advancing these interventions, but also specifically in the areas of interventions like staff recruitment and advancement. What's the role of this committee in terms of this? Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for that question, William. So I would encourage you to, first of all, look to our Year 4 report for some of the most recent items that we spoke to, but also our past reports. We use our annual reports to council as a measuring stick to share where we are at in terms of the work that we've done. And we also have produced some community reports as well. So there's a wealth of information. Additionally, the CABRAC, the previous term of the CABRAC, spoke to issues around staff retention, Black staff, and there's a wealth of information there that we can get out to the committee as well too. And you may have had that already, but we're happy to resend that to you folks as well. And so we're also doing some work around the data for equity strategy as well. That will be important, and we can provide some more information in relation to disaggregated race-based data. I think I answered all of your questions, William. Was there anything else?
Especially in terms of the Black race.
Yeah, so in our next meeting, we're going to develop our work plan, and we can make that a priority within the work plan if that's what the chair and the committee, the chairs and the committees choose. Addition to that, if necessary, we can have presentations from any relevant bodies or divisions to talk about how that can inform your recommendations to City Council. That can include people in equity, which is focused on staff retention and staff, I don't know the word, staff retention and staff acquiring. Recruitment, thank you.
Yeah, the reason as why I'm saying that is because this committee, if is given chance to do, especially in terms of auditing the processes, to see how Black people are represented, especially at leadership level. I know for a fact that many of the Black folks work for the City of Toronto as shelter relief workers, and we want to see that they are able to take up other positions in terms of leadership at that level.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So as I shared in our presentation, this is very important for us as well. We have a new term of the Black Staff Network, i.e. the steering committee, and they're hyper-focused on this as well. If that's a committee that you'd want to come and present to you as well, we can invite them too. But we certainly have made this a priority for us at the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Unit.
Thank you. Kogali Ali?
Thank you so much for your presentation. Very, very detailed. I have two questions for you. The first question is the action plan was informed by stakeholders that were consulted pre-pandemic. So, has there been discussions when it comes to connecting with stakeholders after the pandemic, sort of like doing a refreshed version of the action plan? Because there was a lot of learning that we all went through during the pandemic. So that's my first question. My second question is just more clarity. I want to thank Mr. Williams for raising this question. It's about data and access to data. And there's been a push by the Black community for the collection of aggregated race-based data. Disaggregated, sorry, that's what I meant. Yeah. And we had the, Toronto Police Services share that data with the Ontario Human Rights Commission, which came out with that report, which was very important and helped us understand the impact of anti-Black racism. But our city agencies, organizations, is there a sort of expectation that disaggregated race-based data should be collected, whether it's through surveys and evaluations, so we have a better sense of the level of participation of Black residents, the level of engagement? So that's my second question. Thank you so much.
Thanks so very much, Waleed. So we're at the starting point of that journey. So we have the data for equity strategy, and we have a team focused on that work. So we're looking at how we can move this throughout the corporation. So we're at the beginning in terms of making sure that divisions are on plan with that. This is something that we've been advancing through the plan. We know that looking at statistics around Black folks as disaggregated is an issue, not just even across the city, but across the country. But that's to say that divisions are willing, and with the strategy coming out and the work that we're doing in the unit, we expect to see that work advance. We do have a partnership with the Wellesley Institute and the Black Health Alliance, looking specifically at this work in terms of Black communities. And that's to ensure that we have a community-led and integrated approach to Black data governance. Going back to your first question, sorry, I worked backwards. So yes, of course, we're going back to all the stakeholders involved to go through lessons learned, connecting with the subject matter experts who had participated in the earlier days, going back not just to the Black mandated organizations who we partnered with to have those community conversations, but going back into those communities to invite folks to comment, what does a post-pandemic world look like for Black Torontonians on the, I want to say precipice, but that's not the word I want to use, but our foot solidly in a global climate crisis. What does that look for Black Torontonians and other issues that are relevant, including housing, including food justice? So it is our intention to do a retrospective, but also to move forward by looking at existing stakeholders and any new stakeholders that have emerged since the pandemic.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Dr. Kenty and Kemba. I have two questions, potentially three, that sort of tie to Waleed and William's questions around data. But the first two relate to whether or not the city intends to carry over outstanding items from the 5-year plan, like whether that's seen, those standing items, whether those are the incomplete items, whether those are seen as failures or opportunities to carry over, or in shaping the new priorities and the conversations to be had with new partners or former partners. like whether that will be the emergent sort of direction for the 10-year plan. I know, like in year 3, there was, I think you mentioned, like the city mentioned 60% of actions had been completed. So what about the remainder, like what are the intent, what's the intent for that, for those? And then my second question relates to systems change measurement. So early on in the presentation, we spoke to the challenges of health equity measurement and measuring systems level change. I'm just wondering if there were some key lessons in measuring progress that the city's kind of grasped as we've gone through this 5-year term. It's a challenge in general, and not just this space, but in health equity research, public health, et cetera. So just wondering what some of those key lessons were. It may not lie directly within the unit, but wondering whether those lessons learned are shaping how we're coming up with the new priorities, and whether we're leading with an awareness that we will be able to measure systems change through what we come up with. So those are, I guess, 3 questions.
Yeah. So thank you so very much for your question. So first of all, it is our intention to look at the end of this year 5 and look at, what we understand to be the successes of those 22 recommendations and 80 actions. And so as we went through the 5 years, we looked at it in terms of chunks, right? So we didn't look at it overall. So not all actions are going to be completed in each year, and the pandemic really put a chokehold on some things being done. So we actually don't have any incomplete items at the moment, just that COVID really delayed some of those items being put forward. So the expansion in scope relates to really opportunities to deliver on a larger scale change, or to really leverage additional initiatives that come from community and involve a deeper impact. So as of right now, in terms of year 5, we're on track to see the completion of all those items, but we're also going to look at some of those key learnings to look at what does it look like to move forward into the next action plan. Maybe we completed an action in the past 5 years, but maybe there's a way, had we known what we knew at that time, there's a way that we could have done it better, done it differently. So we'll be able to strengthen those particular items, and an ability to also use this time to really advance emerging issues that have come up since the plan.
If I could add to that.
Okay.
Yeah, if I could add, Chair?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, just that the question about working through what we learned from COVID. I think we learned from COVID that race-based data is essential to sort of being able to sort of understand the scale and scope of a problem, and actually to determine if you're successful or effective in addressing the problem. And the fact is that race-based data is only legally required in child welfare, education, and criminal justice. It's not required in employment, it's not required in other sectors. And even the requirement doesn't necessarily lead to reporting and disparity reduction, which is also in the Anti-Racism Act. So that's the challenge that you face, and that's why, and we realized that we learned during COVID, it's a must. And I think that there's a commitment to move on race-based data, as Kemba noted, but resources is a constraint, and advocacy is always needed, so that's a role. And working through, one of the best lessons of COVID was the need to work through community. I think we learned from working through community, we had 11 organizational partners, and we achieved significant results through those partners. Of course, we don't have resources, but we continue to emphasize or prioritize working through partners, community partners, especially in the most vulnerable neighborhoods of Toronto.
Okay, thank you. And I see there's another question. Person at the end, sorry. Say your name first.
It's Karis Newton-Thompson.
Yes, remember that now.
Thank you for the presentation, Kamba and Dr. Kente. In reference to, I think it was Mr. Ali's comment about going back and revisiting the data collection that you had done prior to COVID. I know that you may take this into consideration, but I noticed even when I was on the last Cabra committee that Rexdale was absent from a lot of the discussion. We heard about Jane Finch and about Little Jamaica and perhaps Scarborough. So I'm wondering if at this iteration you would also include some voices from Rexdale in your data collection.
So there's always an opportunity, of course. Thank you for the question, for us to work more deeply in Rexdale, and we'll be looking to this committee to support us in and what does that look like, and also working with our Partnership and Accountability Circle. At the moment, it's been strategic for us to prioritize in areas where we have anchor organizations, but we can definitely look to looking at Rexdale as a priority as well too.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone online has a question? We don't want to make you feel neglected at all. Okay, I do have one question. I know we're tight for time, so I'm just going to keep it brief. So looking at the 9 areas of intervention under bullet point number 4, community investment, would that be something, would land trust fall under that? I know that's something the Black community has always talked about, especially when it comes to Little Jamaica. And I know that there's some work happening there currently, but what's our role? And how is this embedded in this?
Thank you, Councillor Moy. So we're definitely looking at land trusts, and it's something that we're starting to work on, and building relationships with different organizations like CP Planning to look at how we can advance land trusts and educate communities about land trusts as well too. So that's something that we're prioritizing as well. We also have a working group that the last CABRAC passed a motion on that's working on land trusts as well.
Excellent, thank you. Seeing no other speakers, questions? Any speakers on this item? Seeing none. May Mohammed, do you want to move this item? All those in favor? All opposed? Carried, thank you. The next item, we're going back to item 1.5. And I'm going to have the clerk read the results.
Okay. Hi, everyone. Okay, so the results of the second round of balloting are, out of 13 votes, Lucina Rakotovato Ayo, sorry for your name, received 9 votes, and Waleed Kogali Ali received 4 votes. I will relay to Chair Councillor Moyes to continue with this item.
Okay, thank you. Congrats. I declare Lucina Rakatova co-chair of the Confronting Anti-Black Racism Advisory Committee for a term of office starting October 25th, 2023 and ending November 14, 2026, and until a successor is appointed. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. And congratulations. And that concludes the end of our meeting for today. And thank you all for coming, I know in short notice. It won't happen again. And I know today's meeting was very procedural, but you know, that's the way it is. But going forward, well, that's going forward, you know, get more interesting. So thank you again and safe journey home.